Hi, everybody. This is Mia from Travelpreneur Tribe. Travelpreneur Tribe, we help entrepreneurs build and scale their businesses while traveling the world. And we bring you the business coaches and mentors around the world to help you in that process. So today we are here with Jonas, who is an entrepreneur and a founder of two businesses. And he is located in Manchester, UK. So, Jonas, welcome and thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me, Mia. Really, really nice to have a chat with you.
Yeah. So before I start blabbing about you and your business, I'm just gonna let you introduce yourself and tell us a little about you and how you got started with your businesses.
To keep it very short, well, I'll try to at least. Um, as soon as I turned 18, I'm originally from Lithuania, so as soon as I turned 18, I knew I had to get out of Lithuania, sort of explore the world, understand what's out there. So I decided to go to Denmark, studied there for 2 years, and I chose Denmark mainly because the studies there were free. In those 2 years, I've realized that graphic design is something that I really enjoyed and something that we're actually quite good at. So I wanted to further those studies and I wanted to understand, okay, what's the best place to learn that? And it was either London or New York in my mind. So I chose London just because it was easier, being from Europe and whatnot. So went to London, studied graphic design there for 3 years, did a lot of internships and everything. And after graduating, started working in a financial institution as a graphic designer. Absolutely hated that job because it was very unfulfilling. It was very limiting. And while working in that job, I started working on an idea that I had in my last year at university, which was an app. And that app allowed people to organize, manage, discover, and find a variety of sporting activities. And basically, I did that as a side hustle. And 2 years, 2 years after that, if we really fast forward, I failed in that business mainly because of my at that time co-founder. And so at that point, I needed to make a decision. What do I do? So I moved from London to Manchester because of my now wife. And at that point, I was like, okay, that was a really good idea. I really like working on it. I'm going to start it again when I'm going to do it proper from what I've learned before. So I started it from scratch, got some funding, made it into a proper startup, and I just went full time on it, and sort of worked on that for 3 years now, I think. And during
And
that time, also
Connect, correct?
correct, yeah.
Connect.
Yeah, so worked on it for 3 years. And last year, also on top of that, founded a digital marketing and branding agency for the sports, health, fitness, and tech industries. And we've been doing that for just over a year as well. And then so juggling a lot of things, but that's sort of in short, sort of the journey to where I am today.
All right. How exciting. And so one of the things that we're actually going to be talking about today is about the branding and design. And from what I hear, that one of your passions is like how you can actually tell your story with a purpose. So can you
Yes.
tell us a little about that?
So one of the things that really impressed me about graphic design at first, and I always kind of leaned towards the branding aspect of it, was the psychology behind design. So not only making things pretty, but making things in a way that affects other people somehow, right? So at first, when I started the app, I just wanted to make it really like make it look very, very good, right? I wanted it to be the best looking app out there, right? Um, if I look back today, that didn't matter at all, right? What mattered was telling, really letting people connect to your brand. Who are you? What are the people that you're trying to reach? What kind of language are you actually speaking, and what kind of solutions are you trying to do? And then you realize that through design, you can really, really speak to those people in the right way, in the right language. And that just really, really fascinated me. And so, as you know, through those years, I've realized that obviously branding at first, like in my first year, branding was like, I'm just going to make a sick logo and it's going to be everywhere like Coca-Cola or Nike, right? Only, through time, I realized that the reason people are behind Nike is because of the messaging, the community that they built, the nostalgia feeling they had, the stories they created. And so when we do branding right now, both for our companies and other companies as well, is we really focus on that story and how we can actually communicate that through the brand. And yes, visuals are a very big aspect of it, and the logo matters, but it's just a very, very small piece of a big puzzle.
Sure. So how do you get there? Like, how do you start? Where do you start for like a people, right, that are just starting their businesses and they probably have a logo that they just want to put everywhere,
Yeah.
right? So like, what would be like the first step for them on really like getting a good understanding and, what is the first step to do that, to make your story count?
I'd say don't rush in the beginning, because I know, especially when you start a business, you want to make everything as quick as possible and just get it out there, do everything, get a logo in 2 days and just everything out. Be really patient in understanding what your company is, what your company isn't, who is your target audience, and how to best communicate with them. So for example, now through the branding agency, when we get a client, we never do any work until we go through what we call a discovery phase, and that can take up to a month. And we do workshops, we do a lot of analytics, research, and everything that, so we really understand the company. And branding just goes a lot further than just how do you speak to your audience, is what's your internal culture? What kind of employees you have in your office? How does your office actually look? Everything goes into it. And sort of, I think in the very beginning, you have to really pin down the key factors of your company, right? So if we go a bit deeper, right? So what's the messaging, right? What's your purpose? What's, like Simon Sinek's, what's your actual why? Because that's going to be very important, because you can't let go of your why through the whole journey of the company. You need to be really consistent, right? Make some personas, right? So personas of, what kind of person would listen to you, what kind of person would not listen to you, right? How would you be talking and how would you not be talking, right? What kind of values you've got, what kind of values go against it. Even when we do brand messaging, we try to find things that help you understand that kind of messaging. So saying, I'm going to be speaking like somebody from an X book, but sound like an X rapper. And, it's going to be talking to somebody that listens to XYZ. Like, it's very specific, but at the same time has a bit of flexibility depending on what are the sort of inspirations. So really, really, really get into the sort of the core DNA of your organization, and only then start your branding process. As I said, logo is just a very small part of it. Everything else that goes alongside with it, including how your customer service, your newsletters, your answers in the comments on social media, everything counts, right? So that's where the branding really, really needs to start.
Okay. So what are some of the steps? I mean, you mentioned some, right? But which is basically like, you need to know yourself first, right? You need to know why, you need to know who you're doing, why you're doing it. Then what would be the next step, right? Do you actually reach out to your target audience? Like, do you talk to them, or what would be after that? What's the next step?
I mean, it really depends on the, on the business, how much, front facing it is, or whether it's more of a tech thing where you need to understand what the users will be, and maybe you won't be talking to them as much. But the next step will be to some extent your audience and really understanding them. We sometimes do reach out to them and talk to them, and maybe even like if we do a logo or something, show to the early adopters, like, is that something that would connect with. But usually, you know, through doing that research, you kind of understand who those people are. And funnily enough, a lot of times they're quite similar to an extent of yourself as well. Because when you do start a business, like, you try to solve a problem usually that you went through. So as much as you try to put yourself in other people's shoes, you really need to understand yourself as well. So definitely, yeah, understanding the outside audience and doing some testing if you need to. That will always help. And then just a lot of testing. So even so, if we do reach out to somebody, or even if we do some initial reaching out on newsletters or social media, really test out a lot of different, whether it's visuals, copy, whatever it may be, while you're early, to see what works and what connects with them best. Because obviously one thing that you think might work might actually not work at all, and it might be just very, very, very small tweaks that you only will understand through testing. So the good thing about startups is nobody cares about you in the beginning, so you have all the flexibility in the world to test. So if you looked at, you know, Hoops Connect's first 2 months of the, I don't know, Instagram feed, it looks absolutely horrendous because it's just pure testing different things until you find something that works, and then you really double down on that. You know, even if you go into something like, say, Facebook ads or something like that, rather than putting out one ad out there and just seeing how it works, you know, for, I don't know, $100, you do, I don't know, 20 of them or $5, and just see which ones, and just like very small tweaks. Maybe the color's a bit different, maybe the font's a bit different, maybe the copy has, you know, a comma in a different place, whatever it may be. Those small things really make a difference. You'd be surprised. And then when you see which one actually worked best, then you double down on that one. And that works throughout everything you do.
So what are some of your favorite tools to test some of the things? Obviously for Facebook ads, right? I mean, you just create different ads, but are there any other tools, you know, that you personally use for this type of testing?
I think together with starting a business, I think immediately you want to start creating a community. If, say, let's take an example. If we even want to take a basketball app, right? You want to not necessarily do your app's web, you know, community on Facebook or something like that. You go into either an existing community or create your own of basketball fanatics, right? And you just reach out. That's just it's simple as that. It always comes down to fundamentals, right? You ask questions, you ask advice. Like for me, like when we started the app, my biggest feedback was the basketball scrimmages I went to. I went to like 3. That's immediately about 50 people, different people, that I had feedback every single time I went, on the app design, on the messaging, on everything, right? And you know, you can say that's a tool, but it's just face-to-face, just communication, right? Social media works wonders as well. You know, it's communication, you know, word of mouth and steroids, isn't it? You know, so people, you know, because we're focusing on the stories, a lot of times you know, nobody really cares about the brand, but they care about the people behind the brand. So really depends on what you're best at. So you need to be really self-aware, but putting yourself out there as the founder of that organization and what your true values are, and sort of building a community of like-minded people also really helps. You can do video, you can do social, you can do LinkedIn articles, whatever you feel most comfortable with to express yourself and your thoughts. Do that, see how people respond, double down on the people that actually, you know, believe in your vision and your ethos, and then, you know, use them as well. But it all comes down to just, you know, pure communication.
Okay, sounds to me like don't complicate it, just talk to people.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like it always comes down to fundamentals. You know, you always can use a variety of different tools and nitty-gritty things and everything, which they help, but at the same time, they can be a distraction, right? I think for me, even though sort of I'm quite still young, and you know, and especially in this entrepreneurial world and everything like that, I think a lot of times what young people, millennials, do is they focus on this thing too much, right? The whole world is there. Yes, the attention is there and it works, but it will never be as close as actually knocking on the door, asking the question, getting not just the words, the feedback, but the body language, the emotions, everything. These are your truest answers, and this is where I always start.
Okay, nice. So actually, I'm just doing this for Travelpreneur Tribe because I do want to reach out to my customers and really like hear, what are some of their struggles? What are some of the solutions, that they have tried? Because, as you said, when you're a startup, you have that flexibility, right? To pivot in any direction that you want. So where do your clients need the most help at that moment, right? What are they struggling with? So,
and the thing is, the beauty of that is as well, if you're transparent, if you're yourself, and you get those people to really buy in, they become your brand ambassadors, and you just start basically building brand equity, and those are just additional channels for you now to spread the message, right? And just through being very open and through communicating, through doing meetups, conferences, talks, wherever, whatever it may be, you just build that type of audience. I think one thing that I was told quite recently by a quite experienced entrepreneur, who's been in the game for over 30 years. One thing that he said was, you just need to show up, and that really hit me. Like, it's just so simple, but just show up. Even if you don't say anything, you just be there, right? At some point, your time will come, they will ask, and then you get the chance to really sell on your idea, on your business. And then it just comes down to having actually a legitimately good idea, a good execution, and a good vision.
Yeah, nice. And actually, I had a similar conversation with somebody else recently about what is, one of the number one reasons why people's businesses fail. And it's, because people give up. It's not because they don't know sales, because they don't know marketing, or, it's just, like they gave up. They didn't show up. They decided not to show up anymore. And but if you really keep pushing, you figure it out, Sales marketing.
And that really relates to another thing, is that when you do start, really understand why you're in this, right? You can learn absolutely everything. Like, through the years, I've learned sales, I've learned coding, I've learned financing, I've done everything that you need to do to make it happen.
Yeah.
But you really truly need to believe in your vision, probably even be a bit unrealistic about it. And when a person says you're crazy, it's not going to work, that's when you think, okay, this is good. That's a positive thing.
I know, right?
There needs to be like a bit of delusion in it, like really, safe delusion, not too much, because but you need that, because otherwise, you'll just crack. And I had quite a few moments where I almost cracked, and the only thing that actually kept me in the game was truly understanding why I'm in this.
Why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So to move on to some of the points that we kind of like touch upon, I mean, we talked about like a little bit about like, the design and then the copywriting, but like, how do you actually separate those two, right? And then put them together. So, because one has to work with the other, right? So we look at like the copywriting, right? That's like, okay, that's like your why, right? That's like you talk to your customers and you hear them, you get, what their pain points are, what they need, and then with an effective design, you basically put it all together. So what's your thoughts on that? Like, how do you separate the two and then put them together for the end client?
I don't know if there's really putting it together of it much. I mean, brand visuals and brand messaging are part of branding, but they don't necessarily affect each other that much. I think the only thing that you really need to look at is, once you understand what your core company ethos is and sort of what kind of emotion you want to portray and how you want to be perceived, they have to complement each other. Say, you know, if you're quite quirky and happy and, you know, and really sort of fun and young, you know, obviously the visuals have to represent that. So you need to, you know, have bright colors. You need to be, maybe it's like some splashes or whatever. Maybe it needs to be flowing. It needs to be a flexible logo or branding, and it needs to be really, I guess, recognizable and really, just really bright, you know, to represent that emotion. And then through copy, it's probably the subtle things. Maybe you use more emojis. Maybe you'll use more exclamation marks because you're excited all the time, you know, and stuff like that, right? So I think this is the only way how you really sort of complement each other. But they are quite separate in the, you know, when you actually, through longevity, like they have their own thing, right? If you have a good brand, the logo transfers through any medium very smoothly. So whether it's presentations, business cards, website, whatever it may be, all the little animations, the colors and everything, you know, it needs that consistency just needs to be there. And with the copy, it's the same thing. One thing that I've noticed brands do is they're not consistent, especially in their brand messaging. So many times I go on social media and I see in their bios, on Instagram they see one thing, on Twitter they say another thing, on Facebook they say a third thing, and then on the website there's a whole different thing, right? So there's a interesting rule, and I don't remember who did it, but it's like the 75 rule, right? Where you need to repeat something 75 times, the exact same thing, for it to be in your head basically forever, right? And then just think about it. Like if your brand messaging is consistent through everywhere, you only need to do it 75 times. If it's at least a bit off, you need to do that 2 or 3 or 4 times more to get that brand messaging. And then you're kind of risking which one actually will it be, you know? So consistency is absolutely key, one thing. And then to help that, what we do is we just create a lot of templates, right? So something that you can follow, something that transfers throughout the whole company. And that's why initially I said branding really works outside, but inside the team, your business as well. Everybody really needs to understand what the brand is. And if you ask anybody a question related to branding, they should be answering the same exact thing. So I always focus on internal. So even if we work with a client, we go and ask the employees first what they think and what their opinions are, and really teach them first what it needs to be, even before we go outside, because this is where it starts, right? Especially through customer service, right? So I don't know if that answers your question at all. I kind of got sidetracked a bit, but I think consistency is the word to really focus on. And they're in the start, yes, the visuals and the copy needs to complement each other. But then after that, they're on their own path, and as long as they're consistent, you're in a good place.
Yeah, I mean, what I meant, you know, was more because obviously, like, let's say you have a landing page or a website or a campaign or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Where you need to have that copywriting and the design, you know, displayed on the same page where it complements each other, right? So
Yeah.
obviously you can have like the copywriting be completely off from, you know, from your design. You know, if it's like, if your copywriting is dark, you know, like obviously your design, you know, can be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, so what it all comes down, again, template, documentation and stuff like that. So when we do brand personas, right, you will understand. So if we say use a copywriter from outside, we'll send them that document, and that document will outline, you know, what's the tone of voice, you know, are we quite, you know, detailed in how we talk, or we're quite punchy and like one line sentences, you know, they'll understand what it is. And, you know, when a design comes in, you'll see that if it's we're really focused on just very clear one line punch lines, there will be no space for a lot of text, you know, so you'll kind of get it. So it all comes down to prepare everything from the beginning. So when I said, you know, really discover your company, then really focus on putting all the systems in place, so you save a lot of headaches and a lot of problems way down the line. You know, so the more you prepare, the better you're off later on.
Yeah, sounds good. Anything else that you want to point out that are some of the key things when it comes to this design that you haven't maybe mentioned? One of your final tips.
Probably, I mean, design is very hard because it's very subjective, isn't it? I think making things pretty is very easy. Making things work is a difference. So as long as you really understand your audience, as long as you're very consistent, I think even bad designs, you can make it work, right? I wouldn't even say focus on the visuals as much, but focus on the consistency and the fact that it works. Sometimes one thing I did learn is designers can be very romantic about their designs and just making things pretty, but sometimes you need to do a bad design for it to work. So say if you're a company that maybe sells very cheap equipment of some sort and has that kind of demographic, you can't go and have a luxury brand, right? Looking at like a luxury brand. It will need to look bad. But that's how people understand that if I go to this, it will probably be cheap, you know? So I don't know if there's any sort of design tips as much. Brand guidelines, documentation, templates, pen portraits, and having brand personas as well. Have everything ready in the very beginning. Make sure that you, the whole team, everybody follows them. Be consistent, and you'll do fine. I think definitely.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Jonas, for all these tips. I want to ask you personally, what were some of the things that you struggled, right, when you were starting like your first company? You know, what were some of your things that you struggled with, you know, whether it's either branding or design, and what are some of the things that you overcome then? Like, did you?
Well, for me is, so I'm not a born entrepreneur. You know, I never thought I'm going to have a business. When I started the app, I just wanted to solve a problem that actually I had. As I said before, I just really wanted to make it pretty, right? That's how it was. Right? I didn't know what's in store for me, right? I didn't even know what business is, you know. That's one of the reasons when I was looking for a co-founder, immediately I knew that I want somebody that has everything that I don't have, right? So I look for somebody that's good at business. And I found that person. It did go sidetracked, but in the beginning it worked. So he looked after registering the business. He looked after, you know, doing all the documentation, so I could focus on the design and the marketing aspect of things. So one thing that I really, really struggled with down the line is understanding what it actually takes, how much time everything takes, and that it's never as easy, and it's never as hard probably as you might think. But just never really overthink things, I think, would be my biggest one, right? What I've learned is that trusting your gut feeling works most of the time, and try to really overcome any type of fear you might have. Big struggle for me in the beginning was fear, where I felt I was in my lane. I knew design, I knew a bit of marketing, I was learning those things, but I couldn't really get over the hump of meeting new people. I'm quite introverted at heart, so I couldn't go to really meetups. I couldn't do any business development and anything like that. So one thing that you really need to is overcoming those fears. As you know, I said before, show up, and that, you know, that works everywhere. Take that meeting, go to that networking event, take that call, you know, everything. I used to hang up on people because I was just so afraid, you know, and just be really flexible, right? You can always be wrong. To really have an open mind, as crazy as it sounds, but at the same time, be consistent in what you truly believe in. There will be so much outside noise telling that you can't do this, it's too hard, you know, you're being stupid, whatever it may be, right? Truly believe in your vision, go for it, and just, you know, try not to be distracted by anything else.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're running out of time right now, and all like such a valuable advice. Thank you so much for sharing, you know, your insight and some of your tips. And any final comments?
Probably just wanted to say best of luck. I think what you're doing with Travelpreneur Tribe is a really, really great initiative. I truly believe that it can be something that will bring a lot of value and a lot of insights to a lot of people that need it. I know that that was something that I needed when I started. I didn't feel like I needed a mentor. But I guess another thing I would say is really try and find a mentor. Go over that ego and try to learn as much as you can from people that are better than you, smarter than you, and more experienced than you, because that will allow you to avoid a lot of the mistakes. I think I could have avoided at least half of them by just listening to people that have been there and done that. So I think you're doing a really good thing, and I just wish you best of luck.
Thank you, Jonas. And just final thing, where can folks reach out to you? Where can they find out more about you?
I'm most active on Instagram and LinkedIn. On both, it's just my name and surname, Jonas Urbonas, Urbonas. I do exist on Twitter, but Twitter never was my thing. It was quite it's quite a noisy and sometimes mean audience there. So I always, being a visual person, I always, you know, lean towards Instagram. And on LinkedIn, you can definitely find a lot of content, both articles, written content, video content from me as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jonas. Nice having you, and we'll be in touch.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Yeah.